There is a strange rule in the prison. Whenever someone dies, the warden will burn the soles of his feet with flames. But after burning for a long time, the old man showed no reaction at all. Upon seeing this, the warden ordered his men to dispose of the body. The prison guards covered him with fruit cloth and planned to carry him out after eating. But they did not know that all this was seen by another prisoner in the tunnel. As soon as the prison guard left, the man couldn't wait to climb out. "Forgive me, Father." I saw him quickly tearing open the fruit bag, pulling the old man's body to his cell, putting it on the bed in a sleeping posture, and then cut off the hair and pasted it on the old man's head to disguise him as more like himself. After the arrangement was completed, the man crawled back to the old man's cell, used a knife to pry open the stones on the wall, and then fumbled out a paper ball, which was the treasure map that the old man left for him before his death. But time was tight and there was no time to take a closer look. So he hurriedly and clumsily sewed himself into the fruit bag, and was imprisoned for 10 years unjustly. This is his only chance to escape from the island prison, and it is also the last time. At this time, the well-fed prison guard came back. He was hiding in the cold sweat, for fear that the other party would find out. Come on. Although the early warning officers felt that the prisoner was very heavy, fortunately they did not become suspicious. The two quickly arrived at the rooftop. In order to prevent the body from floating, they tied a large iron ball to it. After doing all this, the prison guard dared to move the bag to the edge of the city wall with confidence, and then threw the body down with force. The moment his body fell into the deep sea, Edmund quickly took out the knife hidden on his body, slashed the fruit belt with all his strength, then immediately cut off the rope connecting the iron ball on his feet, and swam hard towards the bright sea. At this time, the prison guard in the cell came to deliver food to Edmund. Seeing his lack of response, the prison guard opened the cell door and walked in. Then I was horrified to find that the old priest lying on the bed was actually the old priest who was supposed to be thrown into the sea. By the time the warden rushed to the cell in a panic, pried open the loose bricks and discovered the secret passage between the two, it was already too late, because Edmund, who was very good at water, had successfully crossed the sea. The moment he set foot on the free land again, this man who had been unjustly imprisoned for 14 years had already been reborn with the desire for revenge. The first issue of the Count of Monte Cristo. In order to avoid being pursued by the prison guards, Edmund did not dare to stay after the injury, and immediately sneaked into a farmer's house. He hurriedly found a few worn-out clothes from the cabinet, and then he couldn't wait to change out of the fur clothes that symbolized humiliation and suffering. But just when he was hurriedly trying to take care of himself, he was suddenly startled by the strange and weathered face in the mirror. He has not looked in the mirror for 14 years. The work, rest and suffering in prison have changed the high-spirited young man beyond recognition. However, he had no time to feel sad at this time. Hearing that the farmers outside were about to go home, Edmund hurriedly put the only two belongings he had in his pocket, and then hurried away like a frightened bird. After simple maintenance, he returned to the small town where he once lived with vague memories. At this moment, his most urgent wish is to find out the whereabouts of his father, who depends on each other for life. But cruel fate dealt him a heavy blow again. After hearing the bad news, Edmund suddenly felt his vision darken. His legs became weak, and he could hardly walk. He suppressed his grief and came to the church where his father was buried. Under the guidance of the pastor, he successfully found his father's grave. But at this time, the pastor told him, this poor old man died alone in 1925, and no one mourned him because his son Edmund had been buried nearby for committing treason 10 years ago. This news was like a bolt from the blue, making Edmund increasingly sad, angry and confused. Why does everyone think he is dead even though he is still alive and well in prison? Full of confusion and unwillingness, Edmund comes to the home of his former fiancée Tyce, but what greets him is another heartbreaking news. Recalling the sweet moments with Tyce, King Ed felt as if countless knives had been inserted into his heart. He was like a walking zombie, walking on the streets where things had changed, and he didn't know where to go for a while. At this time, he happened to meet a guard who was chasing the fugitive. After knocking the fugitive to the ground, the guard punched and kicked him mercilessly. Seeing this scene in front of him, Edmund's raging anger that had been accumulated for many years was instantly ignited. He rushed forward without hesitation, pushed down the guard, and then vented all the humiliation and torture he had suffered for 14 years. But he never expected that this chance encounter would lead him to encounter the most faithful answer to the mystery in his life. After helping Jacobo unlock the handcuffs, Edmund originally wanted to send him to the mainland and the sky. But who knows, Jacobo seems to have identified this eldest brother with all his heart. No matter how Edmund drove him away, he was chasing behind him like a bug. Don't wait for me. As a result, the two of them bumped into a pair of patrolling guards while they were entangled. They could only hide in a carriage next to them, and a groom secretly took them out of the city. At this time, Edmund learned through conversation that Jacobo, who was engaged in Brandy's smuggling business, had a boat. He immediately became interested because he needed a boat to go to Monte Cristo to find the legendary treasure. After learning that Jacobo knew nothing about sailing, Edmund, who had once served as a sailor, immediately said that he could sail them home. And then he coaxed and deceived them all the way and sailed the ship directly to Monte Cristo Island. After docking, he lied that he was going to catch a goat to fill his stomach, and arranged for Jacobo and his nephew to stay behind to guard the ship. While he climbed to the top of the mountain alone, the treasure map left by the priest shows that there is a rabbit rock where you can see the entire bay. Then you only need to walk 20 steps west from the rabbit rock to see the hidden entrance to the legendary treasure. The cute Meng almost turned over the entire mountain, but could not find any trace of the treasure. A deep feeling of frustration and powerlessness suddenly surged into his heart. Could it be that he had worked so hard to get here, but in the end it was just a field of memories? Just as he was unwilling to count the steps again, hoping that Shiji's result would be slightly different this time, Jacob's voice suddenly sounded from behind. What are you doing, man? He thought that Edmund was simply wasting his time here. The weather is so sunny now, they should sail home quickly. There is no way. After all, the boat belongs to someone else. And Jacobo still has a gun in his hand. Edmund could only reluctantly leave with them. However, while driving the boat, he was filled with regret and frequently looked at the island. Suddenly, his attention was attracted by the two stone pillars on the top of the mountain. They were exactly the same as the rabbit rock marked on the treasure map. He trembled in his heart, and joy almost burst out of his chest. But in order not to make Jacob suspicious, he finally suppressed his excitement and secretly planned in his heart that he must go back to Monte Cristo Island again. Soon after, they returned to Jacob's hometown in order to thank Edmund for saving his life. Jacob warmly entertained him and even introduced his sister to him. Edmund was so frightened that he quickly waved his hand and declined. Jacob's family sat around the dining table, laughing and having fun. However, in this warm atmosphere, Edmund's heart sank a little bit. Looking at the happy family in front of him, he couldn't help but feel bitter in his heart. If he had not been imprisoned for no reason, he would have had his own laughter and reunion at this moment. In the dead of night, he tossed and turned, unable to sleep. The priest's words echoed in my ears over and over again. He could no longer suppress the restlessness in his heart, and quietly stole Jacobo's small sailing boat under the cover of night, and set foot on the lonely sea again. As the sky grew slightly brighter, Edmund landed on Monte Cristo Island again. This time he no longer searched blindly, but came still to the two boulders of medical records. He looked around and carefully followed the instructions on the drawing. The moment he turned around, Edmund's face was filled with shock. 2 stones thick, hiding a secret cave entrance. He held his breath and moved the stone away with trembling hands. And a deep cave suddenly appeared in front of him. He leaned over carefully and got in. There was nothing special in the cave at first, but when he walked a dozen steps further, the sight in front of him completely shocked him. Dozens of boxes, large and small, were placed messily in the center of the cave. He eagerly opened one box after another. Each one emitted a bright light, and each one was filled with all kinds of gold and silver jewelry. The dazzling gold coins slipped from between his fingers, and the crisp collision sound echoed in the silent cave, like a symphony of fate played for him. The wealth that was said to be unparalleled was truly shining in front of his eyes at this moment. Edmund walked out of the cave and opened his arms in the morning light. Before this is a chapter about suffering, injustice and endurance. From now on, his life will turn into a legend about power, revenge and redemption.